Let's go ahead and pull ourselves back together. Let's kind of answer some questions. People have all sorts of different little questions, and let's see if we can get some of those answered for everybody. And feel free to add your questions in this too, because there's some stuff I want to show you as we're really going to move from this method, really thinking about kind of bigger structures, bigger than our little 500 square feet wooden structure. But let's make sure we get the questions about this one answered first, because we start thinking about multi-story things and stairs and bigger buildings. But let's go ahead and get your questions answered first. That's a good starting point. So one question that came up is on the window schedule. Let's take a look at it. There's sort of this issue. In fact, you even sort of see the window schedule has the same problem here, or not a problem. It's kind of a feature in terms of what it's actually doing. Close that up for you. The window schedule, it's actually a little bit different than the door schedule. Let's talk about that. The door schedule is currently set up, or at least by default, it's set up in such a way that every door is shown uniquely. So door 1, 2, and 3, or 1, 3, and 5, they're all showing up independently. The window schedule isn't. The window schedule is showing us type marks. So all the different windows that are type C are collapsed into that one single designation right now. Okay? And we'll see if there's the other column that I might want in there. There is not, so I can add it in there. Here's how it basically works. In terms of the schedule, you got to think about really what's going to be most useful. For a small house, you might call it everything independently. When I'm reporting type marks, if 15 different windows are going to have the same type mark C, and really most of the information is going to be the same, then you can say whether you really want to see 15 different rows or whether you want to have one row and you have the count there. So you sort of have the option, and I don't know why they've done it this way, but it's kind of the same way that for the doors, they're showing individual IDs and they're showing them all individually. For the windows, by default, it's set up, they're showing them as groups. But let me tell you how you fix it. That's the important thing. In terms of this, whether they're all showing or not, it's if you have the schedule open, you can say sorting and grouping. There's this notion of whether you should itemize every instance or not. So if you turn that on, itemize every instance, then it'll show them all independently. It's just sort of a database thing. Do you want them to be shown independently on different rows, or do you want them to be collapsed together? Like that. Now, if they are collapsed together, a really good thing to include, that isn't in the schedule, but would be a really good thing to include, would be a special field called count. Count is your friend, because count lets you go through and put it in there. I'll push it up a little bit higher so I can see it right there. Okay. It'll report the numbers. So if you're going to go ahead and collapse everything, it's probably better to put the count. Then someone say, oh, there are 7 of the F-type windows. And after that, it's really just a choice of whether you want to see them all independently or not. I don't know, it's just sort of different. On a building like Y2E2, it's funny, you think all the windows are the same, they're not quite. They actually vary if you look at the building very carefully. Each of the different facades has a slightly different type of window in terms of how the shading and the depth of the glass works. But for the most part, there are probably 10 different types of windows on the entire building out of the hundreds of windows on the building. So it probably makes sense to kind of do them as a collapsed schedule as opposed to kind of doing them all independently. So that's one way to approach that. So let's get some more general questions. What sort of things are you struggling with? And everyone's kind of trying to complete things. Or some questions that you're having on your particular model that might be good to show other people? Yes, I think I did
a floor finish, and I think you asked for it on the sign sheet, like putting a floor finish on the room schedule.
Yeah.
How do you get it to link to your?
Don't you wish you could? No, it's actually, that's one of these things that's really, I'm hearing a lot of good ideas. It's like someone was asking about, could the view range be reported as a tag in terms of the height? There's all these different things that would be good, but in terms of the room schedule, it turns out that isn't linked in. I wish it were linked in. There's no good way to do that. Okay, so it's really just, it's just a double piece of text you're going to put in there. Okay. Really kind of sad. We really, well, let's see what talk about it. We can play around with this and sort of get something that'll be a little bit smarter about interrogating the database. The problem is, finish is actually a property of the floor, not a property of the room. But, although, let me kind of, it won't be automatic, but let me kind of show you a way that you could be tracking this a little bit better. Okay, things that are just sort of dumb old I hate things that are sort of dumb old pieces of information and have no relationship whatsoever. let me try a little experiment and see if this will work, because actually, as I've learned more and more about the tool, I'm understanding things you can do that are a little bit different. So rooms are one of the different objects that you can schedule. Okay, you know, we saw them in the room scheduler, that's all kind of fine. Rooms, if we go through and click on here, you can see they have some different properties over there. I guess base finish is in there in terms of what's going on. So you can record it there. I guess that's the place to put it. I was going to suggest adding a field, but if you wanted to sort of pick it up as you're going, it is being recorded against the room. Okay, it's just not actually kind of picking up anything out of that. But, so let's just kind of leave it at that. But for the people who like to do programming, there are ways to start pulling that information out. In fact, I think there's an extension that does that called Roombook. But yeah, at first glance, there's not an easy way to do it. What other kind of questions are you running into? Any good stuff? Yes?
On one of my elevations, I'm trying to put in dimensions of windows, and for some reason it's not showing. Like it doesn't let me sort of drag out the numbers and pull over it.
Let's kind of think about what's going on. Actually, for the elevations, I might just go ahead and you can think about whether you want to put the dimensions there or not. So here's some windows. Okay, and the idea is that we're going to annotate and we're going to go ahead and grab something. So what are you trying to do?
Yeah, I'm just trying to show the width of all the windows.
Okay, so just pull them out like that.
And yeah, that's exactly what.
But it won't let you do it?
Yeah, maybe that's a most.
Let's take a look at it. Actually, let me warn you about some things. Because you're so, no, it looks like it's really there. Let's go back to annotate. Let's see. Triangle aligned. Now pull on down. Oh, I'll tell you what's going on. It just says, no, they're there. You're getting this thing, none of the elements are visible. Oh, that's a different problem. Okay, now, it fights you. You're having a problem with your cropping, basically. So let's talk about that. See, I went ahead and I put my elevations within the crop boundary, so it was all happy with me. You're going ahead and you're putting your elevations out there. Okay, now, that's going to let me do it, but let me show you where it's actually controlled. There's this whole thing about annotation crop. It's one of the view properties. Hang on just a second here. Someone's like really buzzing. Let me see if this is really critical or not. Sorry, work calls for just a second here. But it all comes down to this annotation crop, whether if we apply it, it'll go away because if the annotation falls outside the crop, it'll drop it. This is inside. Hey, pardon me, you got a little bit of electric. Sorry about that. Okay, annotation crop. See, I can jump right back in. What happens with annotation crop is annotation crop is turned on, animations are hanging outside won't show, they're inside they will show. Okay? And that's like one of those funny properties. It is one of those things, actually, I'll warn you about that. A lot of times when you're going through and creating things, you get this funny message that says, ooh, none of the elements that you just created are going to be visible in this view. And all that really means is that, you know, they're either above your head or below your head, or they're filtered out for some reason. So really we spend a lot of time just trying to figure out why things don't show up in views or how to control that. They're there. It's just a matter of kind of really working with those view parameters to really make that happen. Okay, what else we got? Any other random questions? We call this stump the chump.
What if you want to do something like a solar chimney or evaporated cooling tower?
Yes.
Or maybe put a rain curtain around the roof? How do you do that?
Ah, that's actually a very good question. Okay, the cooling tower, you're thinking about that in terms of like just doing it with walls or, okay, trying to think. So could you model with walls? You need to do sort of a custom element of some type. Like what does it look like?
Like a tower with the absorbent pad inside and maybe a ventilation pad.
And that would be good. I bet if we went looking, we'd even find some of those elements, or we can kind of create our own. But let's do all three of these different questions. Okay, so I'm going to go out here back to my little structure. I'll go to the 3D view. Let's talk about roofs, because you might have noticed our roofs so far are pretty plain looking. They got these little snubbed edges, and they're not really very pretty in the scheme of things. So if we go through and choose our roof type, that's kind of okay. There's a couple of different attributes I want to let you know about regarding roofs. Roofs actually have a number of different instance properties that we don't pay much attention to. We have it at first blush. One is the notion of fascia depth. Another is really what happens at the end of the roof. Let's talk about that. So as the roof is coming out, okay, this is kind of what's called the fascia height. And we have a choice of a number of different ways we can handle this. We can have the entire fascia coming out like this, and kind of be just like fully exposed. That's called a plumb cut. Okay. We could have something where if we have a smaller depth, we do this. We go ahead and have a plumb cut here, and we cut it off there, so we actually get a specific height. Okay, and that way they can look a little smaller at the edge. Sometimes, especially with 2x10, we get to look really kind of big and clunky. So if we want to do something like that, let me illustrate that one first. Here I have my little snubbed edge of the roof over here. We'll probably be able to see it really nicely here. We can give it a fascia depth, like if I give it a depth of like 12 inches, that's the full height. If I give it a depth of something less, like let's say I only want that to be 6 inches, I can sort of snub it off a little bit. And what they'll do is they'll actually cut the tails of all the rafters just to kind of make that a little bit smaller. So you get to kind of control that. The other thing you can do on the edge of the roof is, as opposed to being plumb cut, which is straight down, let me say 2-cut plumb. Actually, it's going to be essentially the same thing here. Let me give you a 2-cut square. No, actually, I take that back. Let me do this again. Make them bigger. So plumb is straight up and down. 2-cut plumb should be about the same unless I give it a lesser distance. Okay, that'll snub it off a little bit. Let's go to the square, because square should be something a little bit different. When I say 2-cut square, see what it just did there? It changed it. What it does when you do the square cut is, make that a little smaller. It'll still model that, but what it will do is, as opposed to being plumb, at the end it'll be square to the edge of the rafter. So it's doing that instead. So it's just all these different roof conditions. Yeah, finer points of all that stuff. Another one you might want to know about, if you're interested in framing, is the difference between rafter or truss. Let me tell you about that. Okay, let's say this is the top of your wood frame wall, and there's some like top plates up here. Okay. 2 ways you can kind of do this. If you have a truss cut, what happens is trusses tend to sit on top like this. If I have some sort of roof truss, it'll actually sit on top of the plate. Okay, so it's not cut down at all. The alternative would be what's called a rafter cut or a bird mouth cut. What happens there is the rafter comes down and bears here, and then it continues but it's actually sort of cut down in. So there's a little bit of difference. Watch out for that. That'll often sort of vary the height of your roof by an inch or two, something like that. So this is called a rafter cut. It sits on top, or rafter cuts up here. This is called a truss cut. But again, very, very small little variations. You probably don't need to worry about that on first blush. Okay, for your question of what to do about the gutters, let's talk about that, because that actually has a pretty easy answer. If you want to go through and put gutters or fascia on a roof, here's how it works. For example, I got my roof here. Actually, it wouldn't make sense to put the gutter at the top side. I should put the gutter at the bottom side, at least be realistic about this. Okay, so here's the bottom of the roof. Here's what we can do. Under the roofing area, under architecture, let's go ahead and say roof. You will find, oh, hang on, I don't want to do roof. Cancel there. But choose one of the other choices. I can say do a soffit, do a fascia, or do a gutter. So what are those different things? The fascia is this part. A soffit is something that would come underneath here and enclose that whole space so you don't see the underside of the rafters. Okay, and the gutter would be something that's hanging out here like this. Okay, so 3 different pieces. And if you want to do a gutter, for example, it's really easy. Let's choose a gutter. You get to say what kind of gutter. They have some different types preloaded in there, but you can load in some new profiles. But all you really do is say that, let me zoom on in, that is the edge I want to put the gutter on. And can you see? There's actually a gutter there. So you just go ahead and choose the edges and you choose the profile. Yeah, that actually works pretty well. Yeah, it really does make a nice difference in terms of the finish of your drawings. They look a lot better when you start putting gutters and fascias on them and stuff like that. They look a little better when you render them. Okay, for the chimney and stuff like that, let me kind of point you all towards a great resource that I haven't talked much about, but is a good one for finding things. It is called, if I can get out there, RevitCity.com. What is Revit City? Revit City is a gigantic collection of all sorts of just really open source parts. People have made a lot of family parts and put them out there. So it's a great place to find things. And you can go to downloads and do some searching around. Oh, I don't know what that might be. That might be called specialty equipment. It might be called some sort of, pollution control. This is actually the CSI formats. Let's just go to their own tree. Is it a piece of mechanical equipment? I'm not sure what it will be. Yeah, but basically there's a lot of different pieces out here, and for all these different pieces you can go searching, like vent hoods or fans or just all sorts of things like that. Or if you go to furniture, I usually go there and find different pieces of furniture. Glass table and chairs. If you want to go through and find something in there, what we need to do is, let me find the search, where'd it go? Up there? Let's say a modern table. It'll find everything that either has the word modern or table in there. So you can say, now that looks like an interesting one. Little modern glass top table. If you want to pull that one down in, what you do is you say either log in or join. Let me go ahead and log in. Go ahead and get yourself an account. There is no reason not to get an account. It's absolutely free and they don't spam you. At least not that I've figured out yet. So once you do that, you can say, let's go ahead and download that thing. It's going to show up in here. I can open it up. It may have to upgrade it. It may be in an older format. That's okay. But hopefully it'll come on in.
Do you need to put that in your library folder then?
It would be a good idea to put that in your library ultimately, because what I'm doing now is just going to put it in the project. But yeah, it'd be good to save it in your library.
In case you want it again.
Exactly. In fact, what I'll show you with all you guys, I didn't put it out on the server just yet. There really is, there's a whole library. It's I call it the BIMTopia library, the CE110 library. It's really everything that I've collected over the last 10 years. I just put in this one giant library. So there's a lot more stuff in the standard one. But what we should do is just, even as a group, just have a standard place where we put things. And if you find an interesting piece of furniture and you want to share it with people, share it. So here's this little sort of table. It's looking pretty good out here. But if I want to go through and put that in my project, what I'll do is, where do I want to be? I'm over here. Actually, it's interesting. They put it into a project as opposed to putting it into here. Well, I can even here. Oh, that's interesting. It's even a DWG. I should be able to copy it to the clipboard, maybe paste it across. Either that or I have to go ahead and import it. But basically, well, actually, it's probably in here. I can find where it is. That's interesting. Well, just cut it there. But you want to be able to bring things in and kind of bring them into your own systems. Okay, so Revit City is a good thing. What else is in here? So a lot of this stuff, oh, yeah, things that I don't have, I just go finding out there. Cars, trucks, people. You really need that Chevy C10 or the Ferrari? That might be nice, sitting in your driveway. But go ahead and be thinking about, you don't have to create all your own parts. And what happens is, even if you don't have your own part, you got to start creating parts that are sort of representations of what you want. For example, let me go back over to that model and kind of answer your question the other way. And that would be, okay, let's say, for example, we wanted to go through, and I'm going to put some, like some sort of metal chimney on top of this, and it's going to be some fan element or something like that, or some turbine or something like that. It's pretty easy to go through and do. What you can do is, even if you don't have a part that's already here, you can make your own parts very easily. And here's how you would do that. If I wanted to go through and create my own part, all I need to do is go to some plan where I can do it, or I can even do it in the 3D view, that'd be okay. But what I'm going to do is, under architecture, there's components where we place components for the library. We could also do this thing called modeling in place. And what modeling in place does is it lets you create your own things. So for example, if I wanted to create some sort of like round duct that's coming up, and we're ultimately going to put some sort of like a turbine on it or something like that, I can give it a category. Everything has a category. Maybe that's mechanical equipment. Okay, I can now go through and start sketching, and I'm going to sketch it as, I think I'll do this as an extrusion. So what I'm going to do is basically just draw a circle. It's going to be a very big one. Maybe for the inside I want to draw another circle, but I'll do this. I'll do a little bit of an offset of maybe like an inch or something like that. And then offset my second line just inside here. Let's see if I can get away with this. There we go. So now I have basically two walls to it. I get to sort of say it has a start and an end, so I'm going to start this at maybe 8 feet above the floor, going all the way up to 12 feet above the floor, 20 feet, whatever it is. Say apply. Finish. Lines must be in closed loop. It says something's open on one end. What's open on one end? I can't imagine what's open on one end. We got another one now. That's not good. Sure looks closed to me. Oh wait, is there another line out here? Ah, that line. Never mind. Okay, pink line rules still apply. I always get haunted with them. I'm going to offset that in there. Okay. Close that up. What happened to it? Oh, there it is. It's a little bit off over there. The danger of drawing in 3D is you don't always get things where you think they're going to be. So let me switch that back over to another view. Why can't I see that? Oh, I'm under there. That's fine. I'll just move it into place. Looks like it's inside the house right now. Not to worry. That's why. Let me go ahead and make it a little taller. And I can sort of move it over, something like that. Probably need to cut a hole in my roof. That's a pretty bad looking chimney, but that'll sort of give you the idea. You can go ahead and make whatever you want, any sorts of extrusion, any sort of blend, any sort of revolve, assign materials and assign it to the categories. So, although you won't do that right away, no, that's in your back pocket. It's always available. In fact, all those things, that modern table I downloaded from Revit City, that's how they created it. It just started as a series of extrusions, a series of revolves, different things, and just as you start looking at different objects in your world, think about how would I model that? Like if you were going to model this table, how would you do that? And it kind of, as I look at that, that's an extrusion. It's got a rectangular extrusion with some rounded corners up on the top. The legs are almost like little extrusions, which is little circular extrusions coming up. But you can immediately start taking things apart and thinking about how you model them in 3D. Okay, enough with all that. Let's go ahead and, you know.
Have you select the material for?
No worries. What you will do is you choose that. I need to edit it again. I need to open it so I can sort of see its properties. But it has a material right here. So I can choose one of the materials from my library. See what's going on in my library. So what do I have in here? Don't want to make it masonry. Just some sort of metal duct, metal deck, metal chrome. Ooh, chrome, that'll be interesting. It'll be very bright. So I'll choose that, say OK. And now that'll be chrome. What'll happen, that'll render properly. It'll sort of give the appearance you want. Okay, so what you're going to figure out is pretty quickly, if you want to have something like that as a custom component that you want to reuse, we can start creating that and putting it in your own library. You can start making your own library pieces. Okay, let's go ahead. I'm going to shift gears a little bit. Hopefully you're doing pretty good in terms of your assignments. Again, the deal is go ahead and just get that thing done. If you get it turned in sort of by the start of class tomorrow, that'll be fine. Again, the point is getting it done. So no one's going to be sitting there like checking them in to make sure they're all right there at the same exact time. But don't spend too long on it. You just want to like get it done with and finish it up. I want to go through and start another model with you and just start thinking about the issue of, hey, what happens when you actually want to start doing things that are a little bit bigger than what we've been working on so far? So let me open up another model.
So I have a question. You may have said
Yes.
How do we submit the projects? We just save it in our folder? Do we?
Oh yeah. What we should do is when you are done, and if you can do it online, that's super. If you have to do it in here, that's fine. See this thing that says submit your projects here?
Oh.
Just go ahead and, some people have already done it. Just gonna create a folder for yourself. Can't spell today. I can't spell most days. Okay, there you go. Just put it in there.
Okay.
And then hopefully, you'll find that looking good.
So then you want the 3 sheets plus the 3D model, right?
Yes, actually the DWF will be the best thing, and then it'll typically have the 3 sheets or whatever sheets you put in there plus the 3D model.
File.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now I have trouble with his name. Is Aurelius here? That's you. How do you say your name?
Said pretty good. That's good.
Do you have any nicknames I should use? Or
Trey.
what?
Trey.
Trey. Oh, that's much easier for me. Okay, thank you. I try to respect names, but that's a hard one. Okay, so for your model, the good thing to do, right now you gave us the Revit model.
Yep.
Go ahead and if you make the DWF, throw that in there. That'll be easier. Throw things in there. So, KJ, you're looking good. Okay, you have the choice. You can either make these things independently, one sheet at a time. Inside the tool, you can actually make them all one. It's just one of the checkboxes, make them all a single file versus making them multiple files. It's actually easier if you put them in one file, just because then it's only one thing to kind of toss around. But that's what you want to do on the tail end, is just go ahead and put them out there. Okay, any other questions? Yes? It's a specific thing, but yeah, let's see if I can generalize it for people. Oh, you have a piece of, yeah, okay. Let's say you've gone ahead and you've put some annotations on a single view and you want to go ahead and put them on another view. And let's see if I can even do that. So I'll go back and open. Let's go back out here. So maybe I'll go to the one that will actually save something. There it is. So the question is, if you put a bunch of annotations on a view, for example, I put the file cabinets annotation here in this view, and I want to get it over to another view. So here's what you can do. If you were duplicating, you can sort of copy them around and get them that way. When you're duplicating, they would come as part of the view. But if it's after the fact, what you can do is take anything that you want to copy. For example, I'll get the bookshelf and I'll get the file cabinets, both those. And what I can do is actually just copy them to the clipboard. So that's actually one of the choices when you have them selected by the little clipboard palette. You can copy things to the clipboard. And once they're copied to the clipboard, if we go to another view, for example, let's go to the first floor plan view. You see they're not showing up there right now. What I can do is do a paste. And what you want to do them is actually aligned to the same place. What will happen is if you say just paste from the clipboard, they'll come in, and you can kind of drag them around as a group and relocate them somewhere else. Or if you say align to the same place, it'll drop them in just right on top of exactly the same location. So you can always get your annotations across. They'll work for dimensions and tags too. You just need to copy them across. And the others really need to serve you. Okay, let's go ahead. I'm going to start this new project, and we're going to try something a little bit different. I got sheets coming out my ears. Out of there. Nope. Okay, we're going to start with an architectural template and get going there. So here we are, we got a brand new project. I want to think about how you actually handle a multi-story building as opposed to a single-story building. Think about that. Plus, you can actually get through the next assignment. We're going to start moving up a little bit in terms of what's going on. So, as we start moving up from a single story up to multiple stories, a couple things you need to do. One is we need to start thinking about just levels and how we use levels, and you can repeat levels. Okay, then we're going to start thinking about, for walls and stairs and even curtain walls, things that are often part of a multi-story building, how we create some of those things. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go through and create a little building. It's going to be a pretty simple little rectangular building that'll have maybe 3 stories. We'll have a glass wall on some corner of it. Whatever, we'll just get started with it and we'll sort of show you how it works. Okay, so to start this out, I'm going to go through and, I'm going to start by just creating the levels. I think levels is always a good place to start. So I have this floor-to-floor height right now of 10 feet. In my multi-story building, maybe enough. I might need to change it to 12 feet or something a little bit higher to allow room for the structural and the duct work, but 10 might work. I'll just leave it at 10 for now. Okay, and what I want to do is start adding some more levels. So in terms of adding some more levels, there's a couple ways you can do it. Let me tell you about them. For creating more levels on the Architecture tab, you can go to the Datum, Tools, choose that level tool, and then just start dragging on out. And that'll work. As you drag out the next one, you'll get level 3. The next one, you'll get level 4. Everything will be fine. And that'll work. If you were going to go through and create a very tall building, though, or if you have a specific series of levels that you want to use, and you want to be able to kind of create them quickly, always having the same distance between them, okay? You might think of that as being offsetting. If you're kind of thinking about it in a CAD way, that's how we would do that. So let's show you how you would do that. I'll take those out. The other way that I like to create levels, and the way I tend to favor, is I'll choose the level tool, but as opposed to just drawing things, I'll choose the second variation, for one that looks like picking a line. And if I choose that pick tool instead, and then I go through and enter an offset like 10 feet, the nice thing is I can just hover over the line, and if I just get to above, just on the side of it, you can actually start creating many of them. So offsetting has this nice attribute. You know, it's going to copy and sort of enter the distance at the same time. Now, because I created 3 and 4, it skipped a couple levels in here in terms of the naming. That's okay, we'll fix that up. For me, I need to go back and fix that and say, oops. I'm going to modify this. That's actually going to be called level 3. If I click on the little label, I can make that level 3. It'll say, yes, I'd like to change that. I'll change that and make that level 4. I'll change it in the floor plan views too. But go ahead and see if you can create a couple levels for yourself. We just need, if you have 3 levels, 4 levels, that'll be fine for what we need. I just put a couple more in here just so I have a little more to work with. Okay, so I got my little multi-story building here going. Okay. As you go through and create your multi-story building, a couple things will typically begin. I'll start picking walls right now. I'm going to do it that way as a starting point. As you think about your walls, one important thing to think about is, as you build the walls, are they going to be built as a single wall that goes up multiple levels, or is it going to be that you're framing one wall level at a time? And it just depends on your construction technique. Everyone, you know, in wood frame construction, we tend to do it one level at a time, because we want to sort of insert the floors. And if you're going to have a big curtain wall that goes all the way up 3 or 4 stories, that might be erected just as a single piece, as opposed to, or a lot of little pieces, but we won't actually be broken necessarily at the floor levels. So you've got to sort of think about which way your walls are actually going to get constructed. But for now, let's go ahead and do one where we'll just sort of build level 1 and go from there. Let's sort of build level 1 and then copy and paste it up to your levels. Any question, Isis? Yeah.
I can't even figure out how to get levels on my thing and how to.
Well, let's see what you figure out. We need to go to the elevation view, so like sort of either north, south, east, or west. Double click there. Okay. And then go to the levels, and now you can choose the level tool.
Got it. Okay.
Got it. So here's what we're going to do. We have some levels to work with. That's looking pretty fine. I'm going to go back to level 1. And in level 1, I'm going to put down some walls. I'll make them architectural walls. I'm, again, not going to choose generic. I'm going to choose something like, oh, the brick on metal stud. And for this building, I'm going to keep it fairly straightforward. Again, I'm not going to be worried too awfully much about this detail. I always make these little L-shaped buildings. Okay, and that's pretty much my level 1 right now. Now again, this is not showing all the detail. I could turn up a finer level of detail. But I've just created level 1 for myself right now. Okay, and I'll shade those. Beautiful. Now, for my level 1, I might want to go ahead and put some windows here on the outside, just kind of get some of those done. So again, I'll do this quickly because it's just sort of arbitrary about what I'm doing right now, but I'll grab the window tool and I'll say, great, let me put a window here. Oh, maybe just to demonstrate it, I'll do an array of the windows, something like that. I'll array, do a nice linear array, moving to the last one, kind of over to here. And I'll put maybe 5 of them in there. Okay, and maybe I can put some other windows, I don't know. Put some on the back side too. But again, we're just designing a single level right now. So I'll put one of those. Maybe I'll do something a little bit different over here. Here I'll just copy them, I'll make little paired windows or something like that. Just a pair right there, and then out of that. Actually, if you do this, if I have a little pair that I've chosen, and I array that, that pair will be arrayed. So I can then say, okay, let's make 4 of those. So I got like 4 pairs. Yeah, it's kind of, whatever you select, that'll be the increment for what you want to do. So I got my basic level here. Maybe I'll even put some interior walls in here. Actually, I'm not sure if I was really being very good about this at all. For these walls, in fact, I was not. I did the wrong thing. I left these being unconnected 20 feet tall, slapped my hand. Those should be up to level 2 instead. Okay, or whatever they should be. Actually, no violence. Be nice. Strictly for dramatic effect. Okay, so we got to level 2. That would be better. Finally, I'm going to put some interior walls in here. What do I want to do in here? Oh, how about these 1-hour partition walls? I'll make a nice hallway. That's a pretty narrow hallway. My building's pretty skinny here, actually. Maybe I'll make that a little bigger. And I could even go through and put in some interior walls. That's good. And I'll put in some interior walls in the other direction. So I got, this looks like a nice office. This is looking like a nice office. It looks like a conference room on the end. I'm not sure what this is. That's a giant workroom. Maybe 2 offices here. Okay. In any case, I got a single floor layout there. Now, if that has all gone by really, really fast and you just want to use my single floor or something like that, let me just go ahead and save it away for you. So if you really want to, I'll just go ahead and put that out. Oh, I don't have the L drive installed on here right now, do I? I'll put it out here. I'll do that mapping of the network drive. When I was trying to be efficient last night, I took it away. CE server, CE 110 files. There we go. So now it's on L, so I can come back into Revit and save that away for you guys. So here I am. I'm going to do a save as. I'll just put it out there on L. Okay, I'll just put it at the highest level right now. This is going to be, multi-story, okay, single floor only. So if you want to pick that up, you can. But that should just be a simple little model to get started with. Okay, so here's the deal. We got that single floor. It's looking pretty good in terms of what's going on. We should probably put a floor underneath it. That's probably a good thing also. Let's go back and in level 1, I'll put a floor under here. Maybe I'll just put a generic concrete slab or something like that under here. I'll say floor. I'll go out and grab the floor tool. I'm doing things where I'm basically taking them to the wall core. So it's going to the outer face of the structural core. And I'll finish that. Okay, so far so good? Nothing up my sleeve. You've seen how to do stuff like that so far. So here's the deal. As we're going through and working with this building, and we've done that one floor, you might be thinking, hey, that floor's not too bad. I bet the second and third floor of this building might look somewhat similar to that. Okay, it may not be 100% match, it may be a little bit different. You can always go through and change some things, but if you have basically a multi-story structure that's going to be pretty similar on all the different levels, go through and model one of them pretty well. Get it pretty much. I can put doors, I can put plumbing fixtures, I can do all those sorts of things in here. So get whatever you want in there. So for example, get those doors in there. Okay. Get those plumbing fixtures in there. So let's go ahead and see if I have any toilets in here already. Got some desks and parking spaces. I love that because I just don't place parking spaces all that often. But let's go ahead and go over to plumbing. Let's get that kind of wall-mounted toilet. This is looking more like a bathroom all the time right there. Okay, and I basically have a layout for one floor. We are ready to start thinking about copying this up, so let's do that. Okay, so here's the deal. If you want to go through and start making a multi-story structure out of this and you want to start copying things up, it's actually really straightforward. The technique looks like this. Okay, you remember there's that whole thing about copying things to the clipboard. And even when I was doing those text annotations, I was able to copy and put things right back in the same place. So pretty good. If you can actually let it figure out where the X and Y are, all the better. Okay. We can copy these elements, and instead of just saying put them back in exactly the same place, say, what if we actually put them on other levels in exactly the same place? And that's the key to really starting to make a multi-story structure. So I can, for example, grab all this, including the floor. Okay, and as you go through and grab all these things, though, some things will want to be grabbed, some things may not want to be grabbed. Like it doesn't, when you were doing this, it doesn't like, I don't think it would want to take the tags. It will take real building elements. It'll take doors, walls. We'll see if it even takes the model group or not, I'm not sure. It'll let us know in just a second. It'll either complain or not about doing it. But I'll grab all those things. I will copy them to the clipboard. Okay. And once we've copied the clipboard, we are ready to start pasting. And in terms of pasting, it's working. Okay. We have some choices in here. Again, if I say just paste from the clipboard, it'll drop it down, but I'll have to sort of figure out where it's going to get located. I can put it back in the same place and that would be okay, or I can align the selected levels. And that's what I'm going to suggest we're going to do. We're going to go to the list and actually choose the levels we want to put that on. So I can say align to selected levels. And I'm going to say, how about if we take that and we put it on 2, 3, and 4, whatever it is. And when you do, you have instant building. Now, this is kind of an ugly building in the scheme of things, but it sort of gives you an idea of where we're going with the whole thing. It's really all about this notion that whenever you can, you go through and copy things, get them to align that way. We can still go through and make some individual changes. So for example, these really are independent changes. If on this floor here, I want to start taking out elements, that's okay. If I want to sort of start changing the facade pattern. If I want to go to the second level or the third level and I want to move around the walls on that level, that's okay too. They're all independent. We just copied and pasted them across, but you'll find that just sort of going through and really quickly copying and pasting gives you sort of a leg up on trying to make this happen in terms of being able to, kind of connect and make bigger buildings. So copying and pasting aligned is definitely a good trick for you to know about. And why don't you go ahead and try something like that. Let's see if you can copy and paste something aligned and see if you can sort of stack up some elements that way. Let's just see if you can, again, go to 3D, grab all the different elements, and start copying and pasting. Looking great. Looking good.
Yeah. I forgot to pick this for, so I should go.
Yeah. Yeah, let's talk about that. So if, for example, if you forgot to put something in there and you need to copy and paste it a line, for example, maybe on level 1 I forgot to put the floor, or maybe on level 1 I really need to put a second toilet or a third toilet, whatever I need to do. Just whatever it is that you need to do, that's fine. You can go ahead and make your changes. What I can do then is just choose those items and copy them to the clipboard and then paste them up too. You could always just go ahead and, you don't have to get the whole thing. You can do it component at a time. So grab whatever it is that you're missing. And I'll put those on 2, 3, 4 now too. So think about it. It's really, whatever your work process is that makes sense. It may make sense for you to go ahead and get all the items up first and then sort of start working with that, or start all the walls, doors, and windows, and then do the infill. Or you can go ahead and start doing the whole thing as a whole and bring it all up. You can always do it after the fact. Yeah.
I really want to show the level, but
It's not showing you the level. Let's think about this. Oh, let's take a look at how your wall is defined. So for example, okay, that is that. Well, if it's not showing that, that actually means that as far as it's concerned, it's almost like it's merged together. Oh, actually, I take that back. Now, what's that? That's a tall wall there. Is that one a little bit different? Oh, we have a little overlapping on yours. And that the second and third floors, that's more like unconnected wall space. So it's this whole thing about the heights, making sure this is from level 1 to level 2, and the other one's the level 2 to level 3. So it looks like you're kind of good coming up to level 2, but it looks like above that it's actually a taller wall. Oh, I see what's going on. In this case, almost, we need to put some more levels in. Oh, so, yes. No worries. Let's do this with architecture, and we'll go to level 2. They can't focus. That's what I think. What on another elevation? This is so awful. We're going to try. It's actually up there. That's a little confused about where we are right now, because I'm not seeing a drawing tools that needs to be down. I think it is there. Oh, actually, there's the offset now. It's showing up there. So go ahead and go ahead and put it in the fencing. And come up to draw and shoot that tool. Okay, down, over, and there you go. It's, but it is right there. Now it's there. There it is. When you're clicking, you have to get just barely above the line. Yes. Yes. I'll show you that. Okay. Yes. Watch it. Okay. Let me kind of try and pull you back together because I don't want it to diverge into too many like independent discussions. Let's see what you got. Okay. This
When it
is.
comes to the identical instances in the same place and the walls overlapping, is that a setting where I didn't?
That probably when you chose to paste, did you paste on level 2, 3, 4? Did you include level 1 when you were doing that?
Oh, okay.
It somehow says you're putting things right on top.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Nice. Okay, let's go ahead and try and pull you back together. I know we're getting a little diffused now. If, for example, we had a question about this notion of, let me go back to the 3D view, and I'll do the top over there. We had a question of really, can you reorient your entire building? And the answer is yes, you can. It's actually, there's a lot of ways you can do it, but the way I'll usually do it is I'll just go to a 3D view like this. I'll grab the entire building, and I actually have all the elements in the building from top to bottom right now. And I can rotate it. This is really just going to rotate it relative to the project north. This is actually just rotating on how it appears on the pages. You see how that works. Okay, so I rotated it that way. This is basically just controlling what's showing up in the north elevation versus the south elevation, things like that. There's another way, which is, there's this whole notion, very often our buildings aren't true north or something like that, so we can always maintain, there's a project north, there's a separate true north. And we can sort of put in a specific value that is 15 degrees or 90 degrees off so that shadows and light and all that gets cast accurately. And there's a different way of doing that. But I'll save that one for right now and we're ready to do that one. So let's just kind of keep on going with this just a little bit longer. Okay, so I got my multi-story building here. Hopefully most of you have something that looks like a moderately multi-story building. And let's think about what we want to do to go ahead and kind of enhance it a little bit. Two things I want to kind of show you about that are sort of useful techniques to kind of play around that we typically run in modern or in multi-story buildings. One is the issue of the stairs. The other is the issue of kind of the facades and curtain walls and thinking about how they fit in there. So let me kind of show you what we have in mind. Okay, curtain walls are actually sort of very easy to make within Revit. If you want to go through and make a curtain wall, it looks something like this. Let me go through and I'll just make another wall out here just so you can sort of see it. There's a plain old wall right there. If I want to make that entire wall into a curtain wall, what I can do is just choose the wall, and there's another type way down at the bottom of the list that's called, there's a couple of different choices here. Curtain wall, there's one called exterior glazing, and there's one called storefront. Let me kind of take you through each of them. Curtain wall just takes it and makes it a gigantic sheet of glass. Okay, now, a gigantic sheet of glass is kind of okay. If I want to go through and start putting a very custom pattern to it, I can start putting that on there. But for the most part, gigantic sheets of glass are kind of hard to work with, so we tend not to do them that way. What happens to curtain walls is when we think of them as being giant sheets of glass, they're almost always panelized up into a lot of different grids and subsections so that we can actually sort of break it down into workable chunks. And that's the next step down, which is called exterior glazing. Okay, so now we have basically a curtain wall which is made out of a series of discrete little chunks there. There's one panel, there's another panel, there's another panel. Okay, or the third one that you want to know about is the one that probably takes it the furthest. It is this thing called a storefront, where the storefront not only includes the curtain panels, but it also goes ahead and includes some mullions and things like that. So let's just kind of talk about this and how you can kind of build up. There's sort of two ways to approach all this. There's really a couple of main concepts here. There's the wall itself. There's the notion of breaking it up into all these different panels. There's a gridding system that breaks up the glass. And then there's all these mullions that are sort of on the outside at all different joints. There's like 3 different pieces. It's kind of a compound object that actually contains a lot of different little sub-pieces. So let's kind of think about, I'll start with this high level one and we'll kind of back it off a little bit. So This is the way storefront is defined right now. I'm just out of the box and read it. And what is it? I think it's 5 feet by 10 feet. It's got some panel size in there. But if you want to kind of check out what that looks like, go ahead and choose the curtain panel. We can say edit the type, and you can sort of see what its formula is. It looks like it's broken down into a vertical grid every 5 feet. It has a horizontal grid every 8 feet. Okay? And there's a bunch of different little mullions that are specified here, different profile shapes what the mullions look like. And that's one way to go ahead and define a curtain grid. Okay? Now, if this is the curtain grid that you want to be working with, you want to have 5 foot by 8 foot panels. Super, it's all set up for you. If you want to change the parameters, you can too. So for example, if I want to make it 3 feet wide by 8 feet tall, I can just apply. Okay, you'll get this, it's going to basically take the pattern you specify and put it across the entire grid. Similarly, if I go through and change the distance here, you'll start seeing things like that. Now, this grid is actually pretty smart. If you do go ahead and make it extra tall, the grid will repeat. Okay, you can make an entire curtain wall out of something like this, just all by just adjusting these grid settings. So for a lot of people, as you're getting going, this is sufficient. You can go ahead and kind of make a curtain grid right here, and you don't really need to do a whole lot of customization, and it works out pretty well. So if that suits your need, if you have a very regularly spaced pattern, you can go ahead and just work with a grid. It's a really good way to just get started. And it works well for defining it that way. Okay. The only difference between what's called the storefront and the other type, let me go ahead and put another wall here next to it. The one that is currently defined as the type exterior glazing, okay. Exterior glazing also has the pattern to it, it just doesn't have any mullions. Oops. So if I come over here and choose that and I say edit the type, you'll see it's the same dialog, there's just no mullions defined. And that's okay. If you want to start actually having mullions in one direction or another direction, you can go ahead and specify things. For example, if I wanted some horizontal lines, but I didn't want the vertical lines, I could go through and say, oh, let me go ahead and put a circular, or I'll put a big old square one in here. The interior is all the lines, all the grid lines at the interior. Let's get that one. If I say just interior, what'll happen is it'll fill in this one and this one, but it doesn't have the top and bottom, so it doesn't have the borders at this point. I never remember which one border 1 and border 2 is. Looks like border 2 is the bottom, or border 1 is the bottom, border 2 is probably the top. Okay, so now I have something where I have grid lines going in one direction, or mullions going in one direction, but not another. Okay, that's kind of okay. But you can start customizing these and really kind of having shapes and whatever you really want in terms of curtain walls. You can start creating, and whenever you can, if you can define things as a pattern-based curtain wall, it will make your life a lot easier, just because it does so much of the mechanics for you. If I go through and I extend that wall, or if I go through and I say that I want a wall that has an unusual shape, for example, like an arcing wall or circular wall. And I go through and change that to storefront or to exterior glazing. It does a pretty good job for us. Okay, a lot of work got done there for you, just in one real quick action. Okay, I will distinguish this kind of wall from actually kind of creating your own curtain wall and putting your own custom pattern. But you can do that. That's also available to you. You can either take this existing pattern and start, kind of removing elements from it, or you can create your own wall. And how you do that is as follows. I'll go ahead and choose, as opposed to one that's pre-gridded, I'll just choose curtain wall 1, which is a piece of glass. Now, if you want to go ahead and start adding your own grids to that piece of glass, you'll find that right over here in the build tools there's something called curtain grid and mullion, and that lets you start dividing that glass up. So I can take a curtain grid. Curtain grid is that's going to put dividing lines in the glass and let you start breaking them. And it'll try to snap to things like either third points or half points. That looks like a third point. The third point there. And I can start breaking this up. I'll do the half point there, half point there. I can really choose any custom pattern I want, and I can do it either horizontally or vertically. If I want to have 10 followed by about 3'6", followed by like another 10, followed by another 3'6", whatever it is, I can create a very custom pattern in the glass. You can really be as custom as you want, and a lot of interesting buildings now have these very interesting plaids of all sorts of different panels. The cool thing about this custom panel is that you can also go through and vary. It doesn't have to go through and be just all glass. So I start changing materials around a little bit. So you can have solids and colors and different materials in there. How that works is, for this object, this is the curtain wall object, you'll notice it is a big object. If you just hover over it at first, it'll say, hey, this whole thing is one gigantic object. But if you come on in and you hover over kind of an edge, you can tab through and get different options. I can tab through and say, would you like to change the grid lines? One more tab will say, do you like to change that panel? Would you like to change that panel? And if you choose a specific panel, I can change from being like a glazed panel to a solid panel. I can make panels of different types. They're made of different materials or different colors. Have whole exercises where you create big Mondrian block prints of like all of these different sort of interesting patterns. And really kind of a very custom curtain wall. So you can subdivide curtain walls however you want to. And as you go through and start thinking about them, this is just sort of basically working on the panels. So for example, I'll get that little panel right there. I'll change it to some other material. I'm going to change that to the solid panel too. Now, if solid panel's not ringing your bell right now because it looks kind of plain and boring, you can edit it. Maybe I'll duplicate that and I'll make it a solid blue panel. Okay, I created a new type. I'm always creating new types. What's the material going to look like? Well, I might need to go out and find one. And I'll find, oh, do I have any sort of paint that's blue? Parking stripe. That'll be yellow. That'll be close. Not really. How about opposite? I might want to rename that. Oops, let's go back over to here. Let's see what I actually did. I shouldn't shortcut that way. Yeah, looks like it's supposed to be yellow. Okay, it is yellow. It's just parking stripe yellow in terms of what's going on. I should probably give it a new name, like parking stripe. Okay, so you can customize these things. If you also want to go ahead and put grids back in, you can use the mullion, or mullions, we can use the mullion tool to do that. So I could say, let's take the mullions and I could choose, I'll put a vertical mullion here, horizontal mullion here, and even mullions have properties. You could have different mullion types. So there's these 2x5 ones, there's 5x5 corner ones, there's all sorts of different shapes. You can even create all sorts of really elaborate and exotic shapes. For example, well, I'll do that next time. So think about how you could go ahead and create a curtain panel to do whatever you want. Now, one hidden gotcha I want to warn you about with curtain panels, because we all sort of run into this when you start playing with them. So kind of one main gotcha I want to warn you about, and that is if you go through and you try to create a curtain wall which has an arc to it. For example, there's a nice arcing curtain wall. And you put it on down there, it'll show up like this. So let's think about what it's trying to tell you here. It's saying, here I am, some gigantic single piece of glass. I seem to understand that I have some arc that I'd like to follow, but I can't quite do it yet. Okay, and why can't it do it? As a single piece of glass, unless you have the money of Steve Jobs, you cannot create giant single curving pieces of glass. You need to go ahead and break them up to a lot of different straight segments or something like that. So we tend to do that. So unless you're really, really rich, we tend not to work with gigantic curving pieces of glass. What we need to do instead is basically take that thing and just start breaking it up into grids. So if you grid it, that's what will happen if you can break it into 2 pieces, 4 pieces. Yeah, start breaking it into 8 pieces. Yeah, you can make it curved, but in order to make it truly curved, you may need to put a lot of different breaks in there. Okay, so that's what's going on. If you're trying to create a curved piece of glass and it's not doing it for you, The reason is you just need to put some breaks in the glass so you can segmentize it, you're rationalizing it, and then it's breaking it down into a lot of little straight segments. Okay, one last thing. There's always one last thing. So go ahead and play with curtain walls. We're going to start playing with those a little bit in terms of your building. In fact, over here on my little building, if, for example, I wanted to do something like this. If I wanted to put some curtain wall in here, I'll go to this corner over here. And I wanted to put some curtain wall windows in here or something like that. What I can do is something like this. I can go through, now I've already placed a lot of walls over here that are big brick walls. If I'd like to start swapping those out with curtain walls, here's what I could do. I could replace the entire wall with a curtain wall, okay, just by changing its type. But if you only have a segment that you want to change, here's what you can do. You can choose the wall, there's the whole wall. And if you really want to say, hey, that's not just one big wall, I want to break it up into subsegments, I can use this tool right in here called the split tool. And the split tool lets you take a single long object and break it into different little segments. So when you split, what you can do is, for example, let me go ahead, looks like a little X-Acto knife. I'm going to split this wall here, and maybe I'll go ahead and split the wall there. What's that doing? I now have a separate little segment in there, so I can then go through and give it more of a curtain wall appearance within that little segment. Okay, so think about how you want to use that. If you're going to do something like this with a big curtain wall, you might want to do that in advance before you get going. If you've done something like this and you're saying, oh, that's nice, but I really want it on all 4 floors. How do I get it on all 4 floors? Always think about how you might do this. I could go ahead and split this and replace it. I could split that and replace it and do that. But, you know, chances I'm going to get that right are really slim. So what I might want to do is just say, you know, what if I just deleted these walls temporarily? Then I grab these. If I can, come on. There we go. And I'll copy that to the clipboard. And I'll paste it aligned down to levels 1, 2, 3 again. So always got to think about your order of operations. There's always more than one way to work this, and whether you're taking sort of a big gridded curtain pattern and customizing it to take out parts of the grid to make it more custom, or starting from scratch, same sort of thing here. Think about, is it easier to go ahead and edit all these individually, or is it easier to go through and edit one, and even sometimes take one step back and eliminate objects just so you can copy and paste and kind of make the building later. But it goes either way. So start thinking ahead to, if you want to think about what the next assignment's going to be, and it's going to be the one that you'll have a chance to work on for a couple of weeks as you start into the quarter. Your next assignment's going to basically involve going through and creating the building somewhat like Y2E2. Okay? So for a building like this, if you think about Y2E2, it is a very repeated building. You know, there's a lot of modeling that went on one floor that got copied up to the next floor and things like that. So don't worry about it in terms of the size of something like that. So basically what you're going to be doing is taking the building, we'll give you an existing model, something like Y2E2 that has the same roof, the same basic window and wall structure and stuff like that. And we're going to ask you to kind of come up with a new design that maybe is a little more imaginative, a little more forward-thinking than Y2E2 is right now. Y2E2 is a sort of a very basic rectangular boxy building, although it has some interesting architectural features to it. But we're going to say, if as opposed to the building that we're building next door right now, which is the mirror image of Y2E2, if you had the chance to kind of come up with a new design, what might that look like? And in that, we'll go ahead and kind of model this, we'll put some structure in it, and you'll actually start thinking about how it would be constructed. Okay, so that's just a little precursor to what's going on, but as you think ahead, think about how this will play into the things. It's really going to be an operation of kind of modeling a single floor, setting up some things, and then some copying and pasting to get things between the different floors and filling things in around it. Okay? So great. Why don't we break for today? Go ahead and get things finished up, and we will see you not tomorrow. We'll see you Friday. Oh, that's interesting. That's Wednesday, right? Some of course saying that, okay, you're going to go ahead and turn all this stuff in tomorrow. Well, I guess I'm not going to be here at 9 a.m. when you're turning things in or something like that. realistically, if you get it turned into 9 or something like that, that's fine. If you get it on Friday morning, that's fine too. But go ahead and be thinking ahead. I guess tomorrow you have orientation and meeting with advisors and stuff like that. Okay, so go ahead and have fun, enjoy all that kind of stuff. We'll see you on Friday morning instead.